Welcome, everyone. This is a global taste. We know real estate is not just about properties, it's about people, their lifestyle, and their tastes. And that's what we are going to explore here today. So, welcome, everyone. We're going to start with Melissa. She's going to be our amazing host.
Oh, thank you, Alejandra. Appreciate that. So some of you may have joined our webinar last month where we talked in general about international buyers. Oh, I thought I heard some feedback. About international buyers and this huge untapped opportunity. And what we decided was as we go forward, we'll expand the topic a little bit. It's still about international and real estate, but we want to kind of make it a little bit more real in a way. So as we move forward on our webinars, every month we're going to feature a specific country, and we'll just spend a few minutes just understanding the food and the beverages that come along with that country, because I think it makes it a little bit more real. So we'll always have that kind of up front. Since it's the morning, we won't be actually tasting the wine, at least as far as I know. I don't think anybody on the panel is drinking quite yet, but hopefully we can kind of enjoy that. And it's important because it connects us culturally with these buyers that we're attempting to tap into. And then we'll spend just a few minutes on that country, just talking a little bit about the statistics of who are they, where do they buy in the US, some other little fun facts. Then we'll go to the meat of our session, which are our guest panelists. So that's where we're going to have a very lively discussion, especially with these two, about international buyers, the untapped opportunity, why would you care, and all of that. And that won't be specific to our host country or our spotlight country. That will be about international buyers in general. So today we are going to highlight Colombia, because fun fact, we'll share later, that is the fifth largest buying segment of international buyers in the US. Doesn't mean they all live in Colombia, they're coming over, but they are native Colombian, and we consider them international buyers. So first, as we promised, I do want to introduce our panelists. Today we have Tim Costello, who many of you know. He founded and ran the Industries Technology Consortium, BHI BDX, over a couple of decades, and now is out there still leading the charge in terms of digital transformation and technology. So we're going to hear his perspective. And then Christian Kalusa, who is a very well-known international entrepreneur and the founder and CEO of Neo New Estate Only. So he's here today, obviously has a wealth of knowledge about international buyers and what we should know about them. So I will do my best to moderate the discussion, but I can't promise I can control either one of them. So should be highly entertaining, if nothing else. All right, so we're really excited to pick our first country, and it's Colombia. So Alejandra, who's director of marketing at Neo, is a native Colombian, and I think she was living in the US and is back in Colombia, I believe, at this point. But she's going to share with us kind of some of the native dishes and beverages. So take it away, Alejandra.
Thank you, Melissa. Okay, when we talk about Colombia, we usually talk about colors, energy, and of course, flavors. So let's start with the heart of Colombia mornings. We have coffee. Colombia is one of the world's top coffee producers. And just like coffee is an essential part of Colombia culture, real estate is essential too. When we think about Colombia, we don't usually think about wine. But the thing is, wine nowadays is being more like powerful in Colombia because especially younger generations are becoming more globalized. So that brings wine to Colombia. Now let's talk about aguardiente, Colombia's signature drink. It's bold and full of character. So Colombia brings this same passion when they invest in real estate. These three beverages are the most famous in Colombia. So if you come here, you're going to enjoy coffee, you're going to enjoy wine, and you're going to enjoy a shot of aguardiente. It is like our tequila. So moving to the food part, if we have a Colombia national dish, it will be bandeja paisa. You can see it on the left. It is a generalist plate with beans, rice, meat, plantains, eggs, and avocado. It is a mix of everything, to be honest, just like the diversity of Colombian buyers. So next you're going to know a little bit more about Colombian buyers, but it is like a bandeja paisa. You're going to find a little bit of everything on the same dish. Then we have ajiaco. It is a rich and comforting soup from Bogota. And just like the dish, it brings people together around the table. So I think like Colombian buyers are looking for that when they buy a home. They want a sense of community. So whether it's coffee for stability, wine for sophistication, aguardiente for passion and flavor, so like a little spicy thing, bandeja paisa for diversity, Colombian buyers bring these same qualities to their real estate decisions. And that is a little bit what we're going to talk about today and explore a little bit more why Colombian buyers have like a big strength to the real estate in the US. Thank you.
Oh, that was awesome. But why aren't we doing these live so we can be like tasting? I'm kind of getting a little hungry. You know, that oatmeal I had for breakfast is just not quite the same. So thank you so much for that, Alejandra. Really appreciate that
Thank you, Melissa.
little glimpse into Colombia. All right, so let's take a little deeper look. We're not going to go super deep, but just some statistics on Colombian buyers. And before I even deep dive into Colombian buyers, in case you slept since our last webinar or you weren't able to attend, this kind of holds true for all international buyers, why they buy. And we sometimes, as home builders, get stuck in this rut of thinking, oh, they're just investors or, they're just something. And there is a wide variety of reasons why international buyers are buying in the US. Some of it can be financial, it could be rental income, it could be an investment motivated decision, but a lot of times they're moving for work. It may be a secondary, tertiary residency, student housing, global job assignments, could be vacation property, resi-commercial, which is a cool term we learned last time. So there are a lot of different motivators, and sometimes we kind of get pigeonholed into thinking it's, all about the money when sometimes it is and sometimes it isn't. And sometimes it's a combo of several of these. So this applies to certainly Colombia as well. The other thing that we shared on our last website was that, people have very different stories, just like buyers who are coming, to us that are, American citizens or they're domestic buyers. They have all kinds of different backgrounds, motivations, socioeconomic factors. A lot of things play into that. And with international buyers, the same holds true. So just as you do with any buyer that's walking in the floor, into the showroom or getting in touch with you on your website, you kind of want to understand where they're coming from, what's their motivation to buy. Nothing different than domestic buyers. But again, some of these reflect a flavor of what we talked about in terms of their motivations and why they're interested in buying. So just a few fun facts about Colombia. Colombia is the fifth largest source of international home buyers in the US. Uh, they represent 4% of all the international real estate purchases, and it's about 0.7 billion spent by Colombian buyers on US real estate last year. So it's a pretty sizable market and a pretty sizable, lucrative, if you will, opportunity that's in front of us. Um, just talking about, Colombia in, specifically as they settle into the US, you can kind of see, on the chart, Florida tops the chart, but you've got New Jersey, Rhode Island, New York, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Georgia, South Carolina, Texas, Maryland. So some of those markets or those states, you might not have assumed that Colombians are populating those different states and those different markets. And what's even more important is when you look at Colombian buyers and where they buy, as with all of our international buyers, they don't just evenly populate across different markets. You may have kind of no Colombian buyers in one market, and then you have what we call these micro clusters that happen either because of cultural, they're kind of starting to settle together. A lot of times you'll have people coming together in a cluster because of a business that's opening up and is recruiting from a specific country. So you have all kinds of drivers, but they don't just evenly sprinkle across the US. So there is a great interactive map so that you can search by, different countries, and you can see where they're settling. So you can look in your market and you can understand international buyers, what are their countries of origin, and do that research yourself, because it does vary across the country. So now it's time for what I call sips and tips with our esteemed panelists. And I'm going to walk them through a series of questions, but this is really about them just sharing their knowledge and experience with international home buyers. So I am going to kick us off with a few questions here. So let me pull up my questions on my phone. So I think the most important question, and if we can't answer this question, everything else really doesn't matter. And that is, why should home builders care about international buyers? Like, why is that something that we should even pay attention to? So I'll kick it off with you, Tim, to get your perspective on why should we care?
Sure, I kind of break it down into two time horizons. The immediate time horizon, I think the motivation is pretty simple. We have high interest rates, which is causing some problems for U.S. domestic buyers to be able to afford homes. We have high prices. Everybody's talking about affordability, but for international buyers, first of all, a lot of international buyers buy either completely with cash or a significant portion of their purchase is cash. So interest rates are far less important to them. So they can be a really kind of counter-cyclical buyer audience in times of high interest rates. So it's really perfect for a builder. You see a spike in interest rates, you see some decline in traffic. For the international buyers, it's not as great a benefit. Now, you add to that, we complain about 6% or 7% interest rates for an international buyer. They may be facing 10 or 12% interest rates in their home country. So even our, quote, high interest rates to them seem quite affordable. And then you add the last piece to it. It's just the affordability and the value of real estate in the United States. International buyers, when they see what they can buy for $400,000 or $700,000 or for $1 million, many times it is significantly better property, larger property with finer finishes, et cetera, than what they can find in their own markets. So there's a variety of reasons that international buyers are kind of counter-cyclical to many of the headwinds that we see in our market. So that to me is the short-term case. There's a longer-term case that I have been talking to builders about, for the last 10 years, and that is the United States faces a really ugly demographic trend. Our birth rate in the United States is 1.6. You need a birth rate of about 2.1 to have a stable population. Now, that's not a growing population. That's just a population that stays the same over time. So our population without immigration would actually be shrinking. So as time goes on, we're going to have to start to look to international buyers as a larger and larger percentage of the available buyers in the marketplace. And we can kind of look at this in retrospect by looking at Korea or Japan or many of these other foreign nations that have had negative birth rates much longer than we have. And in Japan today, there's about 8 million empty homes. So you can imagine what the new home market is like there, right? It's substantially handicapped by the fact that they don't have a growing population. So I suggested that all home builders in the long term, if you're planning, out for the next 5 and 10 years, we've got to become real experts on how to attract, how to communicate with, how to sell, and how to welcome and service international buyers into our home building operations, because they're going to be an important part and a significant percentage of those buyers.
Great. All right. Well, good. Well, okay. I'm interested. I'm thinking, yes, we better pay attention. But Christian would love to hear from your perspective as well.
Yeah, I mean, as we say, international buyer, I believe, are really a strategic opportunity. On the last webinar, Alejandro from NAR shared the market size, and I believe everyone underestimate that number. I believe, as teams say, on the short term, for sure, they are, a greater purchasing power than local buyers, and absolutely interest rate that I understand are very high in the US for an American, but are definitely low for many other countries' buyers. So I believe that, as teams say, on a short and a long run, builders should become expert. I believe they should understand what are the key strengths in the US. And if I could give one message is to the builder, regardless of their project and floor plan, just because they build in the US, they have a major advantages. But I see a lot of builder don't highlight them, don't explain them, because for you it's normal. It's normal to have an escrow account. It's normal to have, online share database, all the datas. These things are incredible valuable for foreign national buyer because make the process, the purchase process very easy. And that's something only US can give. So when you're approaching the foreign national market, I believe already building the US and the US system is a big plus. And currency too. I mean, you're investing US dollar. There are countries who have a big problem of the local currency, inflation or other things. So for them, investing US dollar, it's a big achievement. It's very important for the future to create a plan for their families.
Mm. That's really interesting, I especially like, Christian, what you said about we have so many advantages in terms of just the home buying process and how, it's structured and it's safe and, there's a process that you go through and they may not be accustomed to that. We don't think to highlight that as a feature because, well, that's just how we do it here, right? So that awareness of, how can we really make sure we're highlighting those differentiators, especially, new versus used, which we're going to talk about in a few minutes as well. All right, good. Okay. Um, when we think about international buyers, what's the best way that we can outreach to them? Because, obviously home builders pretty much, have it covered on reaching buyers here in the US and what we call domestic buyers. But how do you reach those international buyers?
Wow,
Or you just,
that's kind of like a layup here for Christian. Yeah.
well, that's true. Yes.
He spent his whole life, in international real estate, and now he's got a company that specifically focuses on that. Maybe he should talk for a few minutes about, what Neo was built for and how it works. I mean, there's no easier way to reach an international buyer than to put it on an international search platform where those buyers are looking.
Mm.
Yeah, I believe, I mean, the past 25 years, I was selling US property overseas. Okay. And I see what are the challenges that even a buyer face, when they're looking for a new construction. And there is a lack of international branding. You have a big brand builder that obviously are very well known in the US, in Canada, but overseas they are not so popular. Most international buyers rely on agent to purchase the homes. So I believe that having a global network, it's first of all a right way to place their brand. I don't want to talk about Neo, but obviously it's a tool that can solve most of this issue. But I often
Yeah, but Christian, I'll interrupt for a minute. I think you almost have to talk a bit about Neo because look, people search online, and we learned this at BDX and with New Home Source. 90+% of the people begin their dream by jumping online, searching for properties, seeing what's out there, looking at the possibilities, and then that leads to the connections. The challenge in the international marketplace, is that one, they may be searching in an alternative language, and many U.S. websites don't really support that very effectively. and they may not even have any kind of SEO recognition in those markets either, not well recognized. So you've got to find a search platform that speaks to them, their issues, and potentially in their language, that shows them the product they're looking for. And we built at BDX, we built Casa Nueva Aquí, which was specifically built for Spanish-speaking buyers all over the world. Everybody thinks, oh, is that a site for Mexican buyers? No, it's a site for Spanish-speaking buyers, from people from Spain and Colombia, all over the world that speak Spanish. We're searching in Spanish language, search engines, and generally you wouldn't find new home properties in Spanish language search engines until Casa Nueva came about. And Neo seems to have taken that kind of on steroids to the entire world. So I think you probably should, for a moment, explain what your objective was and how you've created that international marketplace.
Yeah, I believe, at the end, Tim, I look at other industry, and I believe that people change the way of searching the information, and we want to have access to the information faster, and we want to have a better customer experience. Okay. If I think about the hotel industry, if I'm flying, tomorrow to a new country, that's the place, booking.com or whatever, where I can filter by many criteria and get the information, and all of them, they're displaying the same way. Okay. For example, on booking.com, Hilton, Sheraton, Hyatt, they all look the same. I know where to find the information. I can filter by many criteria. So, and I can have a better customer experience. I often hear people say, we are not interested on international market, but one thing I want to emphasize is that having multiple languages or presenting a project in different languages with small adjustment based on the culture, because there is a culture effect, has a direct impact even on the local market as well.
Yep.
Okay. In Italian, I'm from Italy, we say comprare casa è un affare di famiglia. It's a family affair. Okay. Why? Because which means that for a certain culture, buying a home is a very important step in life and is shared with the family. So who may live abroad, or that simply, we simply prefer accessing the material and the information in our native language. It's easier to share. It's something and that, by the way, is creating even all a referral, because if I'm buying a certain community, then my friend told me, I know you bought in the US. Where did you buy? And, there is a big, referral automatic coming after that. Just to give you an example, a few months ago, I remember a builder in Florida told me that he wasn't interested on selling to international buyers. His primarily market, he told me, is northeast of US and Canada. So we look at the analytics, and for his project, and in the Boston area, 34% of the visitor view his project in Portuguese language. Because I didn't know, in that area, I believe is the largest Brazilian community. So languages doesn't mean only international buyer. It's, we like to say global reach with a local impact. you know?
No, I think you bring up two really interesting points. One, it's not necessarily international buyer living someplace else. They may be living right in your community. They just prefer to search in Portuguese or Spanish or Italian or whatever their Hindi, whatever their language might be. The other issue is, you do hear that once in a while where a builder will say, we're not very interested in international buyers. Yeah, but international buyers are interested in them. And they're searching today. I think that's it's not like we're trying to convince these people to come and search for property in the United States. They're in the market. They are the market. They're in the market right now. They're looking for properties. They're looking for properties in an area and a price point you build in. I can't imagine a builder's not interested in a consumer that's actually active in the market for a product that they're actually building in the market.
Yeah, no, it's well said. And I think, I'm reminded when we did do Casa Nueva Aquí, I think it was over 10% of the shoppers were, shopping from within the US, right? They just preferred, their native language. So, kind of reminded me of that piece. The other piece that really strikes me, what we're saying is, as home builders, when we're trying to attract people in Phoenix or Dallas or Atlanta or wherever we might be, we kind of have that nailed. We kind of know how to do SEO. We know how to do PPC, although AI is kind of messing all that up. But anyway, let's pretend like AI is not coming into our world. But we kind of have that licked. What we don't have licked is that whole international set. When, to Tim's point, they're searching for you today, they just can't find you in the places that they're searching, and you're certainly not in all of those different search engines in all those different countries. And I can't even think about a builder trying to take that on. So in a way, it's kind of that come together strategy, if you will, that early in the days of the internet, we had to kind of all band together because that's how we had to do it. And I think that's kind of what Neo offers to us as well. All right, well, good. Well, I want to move us on to the next question. So let's assume that we just solved how to reach them, or how to allow them to find us, which is a more proactive way to look at it, not as passive. Let's say they have found us, they show up. How do we work with international buyers? Like what are kind of y'all's thoughts and tips around that? And
Yeah,
Christian, we can. Oh, go ahead.
you get that question. We used to get that question a lot when we launched Casa Nuevas Key. If people were fearful, oh my gosh, we're not prepared, we don't know how to do this, blah, 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 et cetera. And I always kind of said the same thing. It's no different than how you treat any other buyer. Be welcoming, be informative and helpful, be their guide and assistant, and then they'll get into, but we don't speak Brazilian, or we don't, or Portuguese, or we don't speak Spanish, or we don't speak Italian, or, whatever it is. In most cases, either they are bilingual or they have a real estate agent that they're working with, which is bilingual. And you can always also partner with these specialty agencies that are set up specifically to assist foreign buyers in buying property in the United States. And they are absolutely conversant in English and in the traditional American process of how to buy a home. So it's become so much easier, I think, over time. The most important thing is be welcoming, helpful, and courteous, with all consumers. You're doing nothing different with them than you're doing with anybody else.
Yeah, and be curious. I love, we had Kimberly Mackey on last month, and she said basically you treat them like you do anyone walking in the door. You're curious, you find out what their needs are, what's important to them, and you match that with what you have to offer, and you tailor the conversation from there. So it's kind of really the same, and not too much to fear. Well, Christian, I would love to hear your thoughts as well.
Yeah, I'm totally agree with Tim. I would add that, international buyers often come already convinced, they're ready to purchase, because as Tim say, most of them are cash, or they don't depend too much by the mortgage. So in a certain way, when a international buyer is walking in a project, just treat him as the other one, but the chance that he's ready to buy are definitely much, much higher, Maybe they come on vacation, instead of going to Disney with the kids, they decide to go for a tour with property. If they do that, it's because they're ready to buy,
Yes.
So yeah, they don't need too much. I would treat them as a normal buyer.
Yeah. So,
Right.
I think, beyond just the normal thing of, well, how do you treat any buyer? And, just be helpful, be welcoming, be curious, be supportive, informative, et cetera. If you want to go to the extreme, go ahead and form some partnerships with some of these unique, agencies that help foreign buyers. If you have a lot of buyers coming from South America, there are agencies that specifically focus on helping and assisting buyers from South America. If you want to do that, kind of have some kind of concierge program that will handhold them through every step, those services exist out there. So, it's not as hard as you think, but the first step
Yeah.
is don't be afraid of it.
No, and I think, the other thing that, as we go deeper with international buyers, the odds that you're going to have international buyers unique from 100 different countries showing up in your sales center is pretty slim. Go back to kind of those micro pockets. And if you're paying attention and you're listening and you're curious with people coming in, you'll start to notice some trends. You'll start to notice, oh, I'm in Dallas. They just opened a new, applied materials plant or some plant, and there are a lot of recruits from India, or there's a lot of Chinese folks coming
Mhm.
in. So you'll quickly start to figure out there's a country or two that for this particular market or these communities, you really want to, spend a little bit more time understanding.
Yeah.
So it's not like you vastly have to understand all international buyers and their nuances.
Yeah. One other thing, big opportunity I think sometimes we overlook is there's quite a bit of reshoring going on in American manufacturing, where people like TSMC, one of the world's largest semiconductor company, is building several large plants in the United States. When they do that, they move a significant number of personnel, in this case from Taiwan, to the United States. This happens with Korean companies, with Samsung and LG that are Hyundai, that are building operations like that. And so what will happen is that plant starts to get built and then eventually starts to get populated. There will be a very concentrated period of time where a large group of foreign nationals from one very specific country will be relocating. And this is just an incredible opportunity for builders to reach out to that, be welcoming to it, right? And to be able to, end up with a really nice sales pipeline.
Mm-hmm. Love it. Love it. All right. So real quickly, and Christian, you kind of touched upon this a little bit when you highlighted how welcoming our process is compared to perhaps the native country. So maybe if you could share with us a little bit, and since we're talking about Colombia today, what is the home buying process like in Colombia? So if I'm living in Colombia and I buy a house in Colombia, kind of compare and contrast to how it is when they buy in the US.
Yeah, I mean, I believe Colombia, it's similar to many other countries, and we work very close, for example, with Fedelongas. Fedelonga is the local real estate association. It's like NAR in the US, okay? So we do jointly webinar about, training on how the US, and I hear about the process in Colombia. And I can tell you that in certain country, it's definitely not easy at all. You need to involve lawyer, notary. There is no escrow account. So payment are made by checks, and checks, it's a very high risk payment method in many countries. You as a buyer don't have access to the full information here. I mean, I just put address on Google and I can see X-ray of the property from the first buyer, property taxes, HOA, everything, you know what I mean? The due diligence, you have to like title insurance, the contracts, everything. It's so much easier and transparent. That's why this gave a lot of confidence to the international buyer. And as I say, it's 25 years I sell overseas. And this is one of the first things I like. You are buying in the US. US is a system that protect the private property. You know what I mean?
Mm.
I mean, in Italy, to evict a person, it can take up to 3 years. Okay. So before doing investment, even if you say, oh, I would love to buy a house in Italy, you say, you know what? I prefer to go to an hotel. Okay. And then just to turn on utilities, maybe can take some months. Here you do through the app, and in half an hour, you have internet, water, electricity in your home, So Colombia is definitely more, there is much more bureaucracy. And I really believe US is most probably the easier and less bureaucracy country in the world to buy a home.
Great, great. All right, well, good. Well, everyone will be really glad I'm not asking Tim to speak in any other language because he would
No,
try, and it's not good. So we're going to skip that question.
but
I just want to,
Christian speaks like 27 languages, so
I
he
know.
could answer every question in a different
Oh,
language.
and no matter what language he's speaking, it's so beautiful and elegant. It's just captivating. Not that you're not, Tim. Didn't mean
Yeah.
that at
Mhm.
all. Not at all. Well, I'm going to do one kind of final wrap up question for both of you, and it's really we know this is an incredible market. It's lucrative. over 50% cash buyers. They're incredible opportunity. What keeps builders stuck, and how can they get unstuck? How can they make themselves open up and welcome this market?
Yeah, I'll take a whack at that because we had lots of industry meetings when we were building and launching, Casa Nuevas Aquí. I think the first issue, it's just overlooked. So it becomes overlooked and out of sight. So you just don't focus on it. And I think that's the biggest stumbling block that builders have. They have to actually focus on it for a moment and go, oh, yeah, international buyers. It is a significant portion of the market. It's a significant portion of the market where I build. Therefore, what is my discrete outreach? What is my discrete marketing? How do I change any of my sales messaging specifically to cater to this lucrative market that can build my pipeline? So I think just overlooking it is the biggest stumbling block that we have. Obviously, builders will start to worry about language and all these other issues, but we've kind of touched on that. With the fact that many of them are bilingual to begin with, or they have friends and family, or a realtor that is bilingual with them, it's a pretty small edge case where you really can't communicate to the clients. So I think the biggest issue is that they need to focus on it, recognize that it's a real market. And if they did focus on it, recognize the real market, and just spent a little bit of time and effort making sure that their products are displayed appropriately to those buyers that are already in the market looking in their area for their homes, they'd be successful in selling more homes to international buyers.
Great. How about you, Christian? What are your thoughts on that?
I'm totally agree with Tim. I believe it looks hard, but it's not. Okay, it's much easier than what everyone think. The only things about agents, you need to understand something. If I am in the US and I want to buy a home, I go to any broker, okay, or I can walk in on any builder and I find a home, okay. Overseas, this doesn't happen. If I want to buy a property in the US, what we realize after different survey with different association, only about 3% of the agent are willing or are actively selling US, okay? That means that as a builder, if I go tomorrow to Bogota, a conference, okay, and I meet 100 agents, most probably only 3 or 4 will be someone that, can really actively promote my project. And then there is obviously the language barrier, but it's not a barrier, but everyone thinks about it. And building, the brand and everything, it's easy. I mean, technology is supporting all of that. 20 years ago, I could understand it was hard to open a new market, build a brand awareness in that country. But today with the technology, every day is becoming easier and easier and easier. So there are tools there helping to do this, to reach the agent, to reach the final buyer. Obviously, by being overseas, I believe you need to maybe invest a bit more on the education behind, highlighting more, as I say, some of the factors that, just the US system or the single builder is offering, So, yeah, mainly this. And, this is, I believe, what is the most important things.
Great. All right, good. Well, and I think, kind of what we're saying is it's out there. They want to find you. If nothing else, we can make it easy for them to find you, and the rest will fall into place. And, a lot of those fears and challenges, barriers that we dream up are not really barriers that can keep us from moving forward. So I do want to thank our panelists today, Tim and Christian, for sharing their insights, and Tim for not sharing his amazing accent. Appreciate that. And do want to remind everyone, we have our next webinar coming up on April 29th, and we'll be announcing the country and the guest speakers here shortly. And then obviously, as always, this is sponsored by NEO. You can reach out to Tammy to get connected if you want a recording, although I think we'll be posting this. Connect with us at our NEO at Builder Innovator Summit. They'll be speaking in that conference here in April. And then obviously newsletter, LinkedIn, all of those great ways to connect. So I do want to thank everybody for today. Alejandra, any closing comments that we need to address?
No, the only thing is just if you want to be part of this webinar, know more about other countries, just get in touch with us and we will let you know the next country we have, the fun facts we're going to have for you, and thank everyone for being part of this.
Great. All right. And thank you to NEO for sponsoring us today.
Thank
Take
you.
care, everybody.
Thank you, team.
Bye.
Bye bye. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.